Sending medium blocker. Portal is primed. Lock it. Primeval's up. Kill it to win. This is what the Taken feel. Revel in this. One down. 10 seconds. 2 down. Bury another. Primeval compromised. Burn it down.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
So, I think Sleeper Simulant needs a buff.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
Portal is primed. Lock it. Embrace the darkness. Take out those guardians. 1 down. 2 down. 1 more in the grave. Seconds and I pull you back. Bringing you back. Good hunt.
What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again, and before we get started, if you're interested, you should check out my review of Destiny 2 Forsaken. The link will be in the description below. It's an hour-and-a-half exploration of what the game gets right and a lot of what it gets wrong. With that out of the way, you absolutely, positively heard me right. I think the Sleeper needs a buff. Now, Sleeper's a great weapon, but I don't think it's being used for its intended role. I think people would rather eviscerate Guardians in Gambit with it than use it to DPS a boss.
Slumps. You're invading. Make a miss. That's 1. That's 2. 3 down. I'm sorry. Were they saying something? Because they're dead now.
Don't get me wrong, it's great at DPSing a boss, but, you know, I mean, you go into Gambit, you're not using Sleeper to DPS the boss. You're using it to kill other Guardians because it's a one-shot body shot kill with a lot of bullet magnetism.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Now, Sleeper does do a lot of damage to anything you wield it against, but I think it could be better. And I think we could push it more into the role of a boss DPS weapon, not a one-shot body shot Guardian killer. And to do so, we would actually need to buff the weapon. So against this ogre, Sleeper does 10,470 damage on crit, meaning the entire 3-shot magazine for Sleeper, in this instance, would do 31,410 damage, and the entire weapon, including reserves, would do 136,110 damage. Now, of course, depending on what you're fighting, these numbers will change, but these are our, for the sake of argument, benchmark numbers. Now, anytime you change a weapon, it's important to keep the spirit of that weapon alive. Sleeper was designed to be a massive damage fuck you to any enemy combatant. So the question now becomes, how do you make the Sleeper less effective against players, but still retain, if not enhance, its ability to kill a boss? Because let's not kid ourselves, we're not talking about Sleeper because it's a dominant go-to PvE weapon. It's not. However, in certain game types, like Gambit, it is absolutely oppressive, in a way that's not necessarily oppressive against boss enemies, but against players. That said, before we get into how I would go after changing Sleeper Simulant, we really need to be careful about calling for nerfs to weapons. Because here's the thing, today it's Sleeper, tomorrow it's Two-Tailed Fox, or Blade Barrage, or the Escalation Protocol Shotgun, or anything and everything that's just remotely good and annoying to face off against. That's how it has always been with the Destiny community. And if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. Now, I agree, there are things that function well outside how I believe they should. Shotgun range is a bit too generous. Same thing with auto rifle range. Snipers and weapons in general have way too much aim assist and way too much bullet magnetism. And the new Void Warlock class, yeah, you can go fuck yourself, at least in my opinion. And it's okay to get frustrated at things, like I am with the new Void Warlock class. But I'm also not calling for it to be nerfed into the ground. I'm just like, yeah, I hate going up against that class. The fucking Nova Bomb grenade that you can cross-map people with, it's kind of ridiculous. But you know what? If there's not ways to counter it now, there will be, and there should be. And I think that's how any buffs or nerfs should be looked at, because if you take something from people, they're gonna be upset. But if you buff it, if you provide an alternative to it, nobody's gonna bitch about that. And it's really dangerous to call for nerfs or something when we know that Destiny 2's weapon system isn't complete right now. We know that we're getting new weapon classifications this winter. We're getting railguns, we're getting heavy machine guns. We could see the return of the last word. So instead of nerfing things, we just need more counters baked into the game. For example, shoulder charge is a problem? Well, bring back last word. It really is just as simple as that. If shotguns are a problem, well, bring back last word. If last word becomes a problem, well, buff malfeasance. Actually, malfeasance just needs a buff in general, and we'll have a video on that, but I digress. With all of that said, how would I change the sleeper? Well, what I would first do is make it one shot per magazine.
But Joker, you said you weren't gonna nerf it!
Now, I know what you're thinking. At first glance, that seems like a nerf. However, it's not. That one shot would be worth the equivalent damage of all three. For a whopping, using our previous benchmark data, 31,410 damage per shot, instead of 10,470, but that's not all. So the idea is basically to combine all the ammo, or all the reloads, into what would be the equivalent of one shot per reload. This would make the weapon less effective against players, but retain its damage and actually make it more effective against PvE targets. Charge time and reload speed would remain the same, but you're decreasing the number of charges that you have to take before you can fire your weapon, thus increasing the DPS. Now, Sleeper has an ammo count of 13 by default. That's 4 reloads, except on the last reload you only get one shot. Now, of course, we don't want to take that potential damage away. We could take that damage potential and distribute it across all the other shots. That'd be one way of doing it, but how about we just give Sleeper another shot? And in doing so, this would, using our benchmark information, take Sleeper from 136,110 damage to 157,050 damage, adding the equivalent extra damage of 2 extra shots to the current DPS. So, not only would Sleeper have more damage output, just in general, it would do the damage quicker. This is kind of turning it into a Gjallarhorn. Now, if you guys remember Destiny 1 and you remember Gjallarhorn, nobody used Gjallarhorn in PvP. I mean, there was that occasional dude who used it, but like, nobody used Gjallarhorn in PvP. But it was the optimal weapon to use in PvE. I think we should give Sleeper the Gjallarhorn treatment. Make it so ridiculously effective against bosses, but not all that effective, at least not more effective than any other heavy weapon against players. I think this is an eloquent change. I think it keeps the spirit of the weapon intact. I think it doesn't negatively affect PvE players like so many weapon changes end up doing, but of course I would. I came up with it. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty.